Hey now. Welcome to Riverside. So this is the part of the Troutbitten project where I just talk about some of the things I've been thinking about and writing about. And let me start by acknowledging and mourning the loss of John Gierach just a few days ago. Probably the best fishing author there ever was. I was a 20th century American lit focus English major. And even with all that exposure to different authors, I still feel like John's my favorite author ever. Not just because I'm a fisherman, but because of the way Gierach could just capture everything that we love about the woods and the water. He just had an inspiring way with words. I think Gierach's humble approach to fishing is what attracted all of us. I always said he was just a dirty fisherman, and I mean that with respect. That's a good thing. No pretense in John Gierach. And he just wrote about what we loved out there, and he had the wit and the energy and the passion for what he did and for the friendships and for everything that surrounds this whole game, and inspired a lot of us, certainly me, and so many others. I know we have his books on our bookshelf, and a lot of those words from his pages and paragraphs and just his thoughts, in our hearts when we're out there. I want to fish like John did. I want to write like John did. So we'll miss him, but we're happy for his legacy, for what he left, and all of the ways that he's influenced and affected all of us. So I spent a good part of this summer focused on the Fish and Film series. I filmed that myself, I edited it myself, and I really came to love this editing software. It's made stuff like this possible. I've wanted to do this Riverside idea for quite a long time, where I'm gonna read an article that I wrote here in just a little bit. But I feel like I needed to get the software kind of under some kind of control and understand. And what I've really come to understand is what a creative tool it is, what an amazing creative tool this video is. And I'm really enjoying it. So that was 4 episodes. It's just fishing and filming. That's why I called it that. And I'm proud to say that Yeti is sponsoring the next few episodes here in the fall. So I was doing one every 2 weeks. Now I'm guiding. I'm back to guiding. I guide in the spring, I guide in the fall. But it's impossible to do a fish and film video every 2 weeks while I'm guiding. So I'm going to shoot for one a month. So thanks to everybody out there for the encouragement. I think you get it. The idea is to just show the fishing, show what it's like, show the hopes and the failures and the struggles and some of the victories. It's not about catching the most fish or the biggest fish, but, it's just fishing out there. And I love what, again, this video format really allows me to work with and kind of show and use as a creative tool. It's a lot of fun. One of the things that I showed so much in the Fish and Film series was using split shot, sometimes drop shot, but especially split shot. I got a lot of questions like, why do you use split shot? Why not weighted flies? Well, I use both. And I didn't intend for split shot to be almost featured in, I think, each of those videos, at least 3 of the videos, but there it was. And I don't know, I suppose these days it kind of confuses people. Now, Troutbitten is nearing the 10th anniversary. It's almost been 10 years of Troutbitten, and way back from the beginning, I was talking about tight lining and, split shot and weighted flies, and I wrote an article back in 2017 titled Split Shot versus Weighted Flies. I do a remix. Troutbitten regulars understand that I publish 3 times a week to the website, and I often do a remix on the weekends. And when I go back and kind of revisit the old articles, I revamp them. I edit them. I like to think that I got better as a writer, as an editor, as a fisherman. And I don't just repost them. I usually tool around with them a little bit. So I went back and I was looking at this article because it really applies. Since this article, we've also published a full podcast on using all kinds of different weights. I'll leave links up here. And I published an article titled, No Limits, Use Every Kinds of Weight Available. And again, if you know Troutbitten, then you know that's one of my mottos. It's just one of my things, is to just be versatile. No restrictions, no limits. Use whatever works. So here's the article. It's titled Split Shot versus Weighted Flies. So you hate split shot, right? I've never had anyone tell me that they like using it. But for me, split shot is a convenient and useful tool in my vest. I think it's underrated, and I think it's a shame that split shot has fallen so far out of favor. It does things for me that can't be done any other way, and I like it. Yes, I like split shot. Sure, I prefer weighted flies over having shot crimped to the line. My nymph box is full of tungsten beaded flies, but I also carry a selection of unweighted patterns that get a regular workout while using split shot for the weight. So here are some thoughts about all of that. So strike detection is better without the shot, because anytime we're casting under the surface, what we're really fishing is the weight, whatever form that takes. It's the weight we're in touch with while tight line nymphing, and it's the weight that the yarn or bobber is in touch with while suspension nymphing. Only when that weight moves do we feel the take, or see the take. That's when we see the sighter hesitate or the suspender jiggle. The weight, then, is better off placed in the fly. And when a trout eats a weighted fly, the strike detection is immediate, if we're in touch. But when the trout eats an unweighted fly with shot in front, the fish has to move the line, enough for the split shot to also move. Only then can we detect the strike. It's that simple. And there's no denying the loss of strike detection when using split shot for the weight, but the effect can be mitigated. I should mention here that drop shot solves the problem of strike detection with split shot, but it comes with its own set of troubles too. I use drop shot as well, and I've written a full series on the subject. I'll leave a link. I've been told that changing flies is easier than changing split shot, that carrying a full set of weighted flies to vary the necessary weight is more efficient than crimping split shot to the line. I don't buy that one. Like anything else, you need a good plan, and if you use the right shot, learn to take it off quickly, and store it in a convenient place, using split shot is just as efficient as using weighted flies. Now I know that's going to ruffle the feathers of some guys who tie knots with the speed of a seamstress and can change flies in a second. I can too, but it's no faster than changing or adding shot. And when you factor in the extra flies that you have to tie and carry, I'd argue that a split shot system is actually more efficient, slightly. Now I'm not suggesting that split shot is better than weighted flies. I'm only saying that split shot has its place. There are times when it outperforms weighted flies and you'll flat out catch more fish. I use both systems on the regular, and sometimes I mix them together. Let's get to that. I think some things have gotten mixed up. There's a misconception about tight line nymphing because it's gotten tangled up with Euro nymphing. There's an idea that weighted flies are what make all of this work, but I disagree. Weighted flies are not an integral part of why tight line nymphing styles are so successful. Removing fly line, using a sighter, and limiting multiple diameters under the water are what makes tight line systems work. It's not the flies. It's not where the weight is. This illustration shows a deadly nymph rig. Attach this tippet section to a tight line leader with a sighter and it will perform just as well, maybe better, than a weighted fly on the point. I also strongly prefer placing the upper fly on a tag because I'm in contact with both the upper fly and the split shot below. The tag allows my upper nymph, usually weighted, to ride closer to the bottom, and I can adjust the depth by simply varying the tag length or distance to the shot. Some patterns catch more fish when they're built without weight. Going unweighted allows the flies to dance more in the current. They're tossed around more freely down there, perhaps a little more naturally. There's not a whole lot I can do in these paragraphs to convince a skeptical fisherman of this, so you just have to give it a try. So here's my theory. Going unweighted is best for patterns which imitate things that don't swim or move very much, if at all. Primarily, that's egg patterns and worm patterns and similar, especially eggs. Maybe it's the look of a neutral buoyancy that turns fish on a little more. Unweighted eggs roll behind the split shot, free to glide along naturally. But weighted eggs, especially tungsten beaded ones, drop quickly. And I think it's an unnatural look, sometimes. I keep the split shot close to the point nymph, and this is important, about 4 to 5 inches up. The nymph is then free to tumble along on a 5-inch leash, and I think that freedom of movement makes all the difference, sometimes. Now here's more of my theory, so think about this. When we're in touch with our weighted nymphs, we're moving them. Even with our best efforts to keep the flies stabilized, the nymphs are crossing through microcurrents or traveling up and down in the water column just a bit. This happens because we're directly in touch, nymph to rod tip, and because we are imperfect people. Things move imperfectly. So we cannot be both in touch with the nymphs and also maintain a perfect dead drift. Although the ability to be close on this perfection here is probably what separates a good nymph fisherman from a great one. There's always some accidental motion when we're in contact with the weighted fly. That's my point. However, that unintended slight motion can look like a swimming nymph. And sometimes it's just the right answer for fooling trout. Just as often, though, an unweighted nymph on a 5-inch leash behind some split shot might do better, because it doesn't have that accidental swimming motion quite as much. So I think eggs and worm flies fish better when they're unweighted. I also have a set of crest bugs and scuds that I fish with split shot for weight. In fact, I fish a variety of wet flies and classic hare's ears and pheasant tails and a handful of small natural patterns with split shot for the weight. Some days, simply changing out from the beaded versions of these patterns to unweighted ones with split shot gets me into fish. There is no doubt about that. And who knows why? I'm just glad I used both rigs. So I've acknowledged that the trouble with split shot is the strike detection. To sense or see a strike, the trout needs to take our nymph and then move the shot. Fair enough. Everything is a trade-off, right? But if you keep the distance between a split shot and the nymph short, just a few inches, the loss of strike detection is minimal. Life challenges all of us with choices. Here's another question or another argument. Why not put another weighted fly down there instead of split shot, right? I've heard this a lot. People say, I'd rather attach something to my line that fish can eat, so I use weighted flies instead of shot. I think that's a good point, but it can only go so far. I can't replace my split shot with a tungsten beaded nymph and fish 2 flies that are 5 inches apart. I've tried, I really have. And for whatever reason, fish don't respond well when 2 flies are so close together. But with split shot just a few inches from the fly, trout don't seem to mind that at all. Furthermore, split shot hangs up far less than weighted flies. That's a fact too. At the tying vise, you can only attach so much weight to the hook, right? So going heavier often means going larger, sometimes much larger, to be heavy enough if you're trying to get all the weight into the fly. There's no way around it. But sometimes I don't want to go to a bigger fly. I don't want it to be bigger. So to get the necessary additional weight, I simply add split shot on the river. Adding a bit of shot above a weighted nymph is a quick and efficient way to adapt to a deeper pocket of water without changing flies. On my favorite river, I often have great success with a number 12 tungsten beaded stonefly. And for much of the water, it's the perfect weight to get me in the strike zone. When I approach a deeper and faster section, I don't want to change out to a number 10 or a number 8 stonefly just to get to the bottom. The larger stones don't produce as well there, and I don't want to overbead the nymph and change the profile. By adding only a small amount of weight, like a number 6 shot is often all it takes, I'm still in touch with the stonefly, because it's still the heaviest thing on my line, and that's another good compromise. So just one more thing here. I recently wrote about my preferred way to fish streamers, or one of them. It's what I call kind of an old school method. I like to put the streamer at or near the bottom and give it enough motion to entice trout, but not so much that I'm asking them to chase or attack anything. I try to make it easy for the fish. Weighted flies are great for this, but I've also found some streamer patterns and methods that work better with split shot. The split shot allows for a more natural action to the streamer. Most bait fish don't drop straight down, but heavily weighted flies do. To fish streamers, we surely need weight somewhere in the rig. And using split shot rather than built-in weight allows for a more gradual up and down motion. The further away the weight is from the streamer, the more moderate those motions will be. The streamer still falls, but it's slower and perhaps more natural. I like to run the split shot about 6 inches above my streamer. My fly then has a 6-inch leash for dancing around with the currents, and I can do some unusual things by allowing the shot to touch or rest on the bottom. I've had good success with this method, especially at night. The shot touches the bottom, but the fly does not. Instead, the fly stutters, twitches, and stalls with every contact of the shot. It's a good look. The unweighted fly often swings around from a head downstream to a head upstream position, doing what I call the Sawyer pivot. Here's the downside. More weight equals less strike detection. When I use heavy split shot, I do have a harder time sensing takes. Again, the fish has to move the fly enough to move the shot. That's the only way I'll see the strike. So, weighted flies catch fish. And split shot works too. It's one of those timeless tools that will never go away. It's how I got my fathead minnows to the bottom of the river as a kid. And it's a useful way to get nymphs and streamers down there too. I say try it all. Fish hard, friends, and have fun out there.